You ready?
Mm-hmm.
My father, in his practice of medicine, invented the Newman proctoscope, which A.S. Allo made and distributed, and it was an improvement on the proctoscopic equipment of its period. And one of the very important things my father introduced was to reduce post-operative pain in surgery that he did, and this was by very, very careful suturing, and he released patients after 4 days, 4 post-operative days, whenever he could, even though a week was generally standard. And this was the very beginning of getting people out of the hospital and not running into hospital problems of which they have now conquered, and now are able with various techniques to get them out of the hospital early.
He was ahead of his times. And
Well, he was a thinker, and there were a lot of interesting improvements that everyone in medicine was able to make. His earnings in medicine were, if he'd have a good year, he'd earn about $10,000, and this he considered wonderful. He had several other office associates. In addition to Dr. Jerome Cook, he officed with Dr. Herman Meyer and Dr. Grunfeld and Jacob Stoller. So this was, as I indicated, in the Metropolitan Building.
Mm-hmm. Where's that?
Grand Avenue
And
Olive.
An Olive, that's right. I remember. Yeah. Well, $10,000 was a great deal more than a non-professional man might have been making in those days.
Well, when we say non-professional, I mean a businessman would earn more than that.
Would they?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
A business executive would earn somewhat more than that, although somewhere less. It was rather normal for doctors that were successful to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to add a little bit about a document that's before me with respect to my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I have the state of Missouri's certificate of registration to Rose Newman by the Secretary of State of Missouri for a touring car which she owned on August 6, 1908, manufactured by T.B. Jeffrey and Company, being propelled by gasoline, and that it was duly registered in the state of Missouri. This is unusual to have a auto registration of that nature. Now, we had a cousin by the name of Abraham Mayer, who was in the business of purchasing buffalo bones, scrap iron, old metals, rags, and old paper. And of all the things that he purchased as scrap paper the paper money issued by the state of Missouri under the Confederacy, which could not be issued because the Confederacy had been run out of Jefferson City by the time the paper money was delivered. A January 1, 1862 issue was a lithographed issue which Confederates got into circulation. But the engraved issue, which came from South Carolina, part of Richmond, Hoyer and Ludwig in Richmond, Virginia, this ended up in Missouri, and Mayer bought it. And in view of my interest in money, I was very, very surprised to find that advertisements were printed on the blank backs of this money, and among those advertisements, Bremen Drugstore, corner of Broadway and Salisbury Streets, pure medicines and toilet articles, full assortment of stationery, fine perfumes and toilet soaps, prescriptions filled at reasonable prices by Adolph Pfeiffer, graduate in pharmacy. Trusses, a specialty, paints, oil, glass, and fine cigars in stock. In other words, here was, in the 1880s, here was my grandfather using some of this paper to print advertisements on, and a couple of other members of the family. Morris Mayer, he was in the scrap iron business, and he advertised for the same things that Abraham Mayer did, scrap iron and old metals and rags and bones. So it was...
Bones. What were the bones then going to be used for?
The bones were ground up for fertilizer, and this was a means of taking animal residue and making something out of it, because fertilizer...
we still use bone meal.
Well, bones are fine for that type of thing, but this was just interesting
that he advertised that way.
That they advertised that way, and of course that those pieces ended up in my collection. Now let's switch over to what else do you want to talk about?
Well, I want to talk eventually about your growing up, but if we want to stay in the relatives first.
Well, let's
let's just get you grown up, and then we can go backwards.
Well, I didn't want to go into me.
Well, just a little bit. I have to get a framework. We need a little framework here.
Ask me whatever framework you want.
I just want to discuss, you went to a neighborhood school or otherwise?
My schooling?
Yes.
I went to the field school on Olive Street, just east of Taylor. And I used to walk the several blocks to field school, and I started there in kindergarten.
Is that where the first kindergarten started?
No, the first kindergarten was the Susan Blow started on the south side in Carondelet, Missouri. The first kindergarten, and the first continually operating kindergarten. There's a big technicality on that, but the kindergarten development in St. Louis was enormous. So we had it spread all over the public schools here, and it was all from the German custom of having a kindergarten, even though Henry Bow's daughter Susan was the one who pushed it and successfully in St. Louis. So
you could walk to school.
I could walk to school. We took our lunch to school with us every day, and there was a confectionery store across the street where we could spend a penny for candy, and it was a very simple, plain group of children.
Neighbors?
Yeah, all in the neighborhood. Everybody walked to school, and it had people from Pershing and not yeah, Pershing eventually, and from Euclid and McPherson, Washington, Olive Street, Kingsbury, all the
A lot of kids living near you.
all the kids in the neighborhood. There was no problem. Now there were good kids as well as bad kids, as every other, and I was shocked to finally end up with Marvin Michaels, who was became a robber and gangster and was part of this Michaels crowd that you hear about today.
And he just went to school with you?
Oh, sure.
Uh-huh.
And other prominent people did. The Charlie Summers, who became head of Monsanto Chemical Company, went to school with me. And the usual, you know, you always there's wonderful people and
You
everything.
had fun?
I guess I was just kind of struggling to get along and to learn. I had good teachers. Miss Dames was a very famous teacher in St. Louis who was very strict, and she was discipline was more important to her than learning anything. So, but we enjoyed all of that, and I would say it was just an average schooling in my first few years, but we had athletics in the schoolyard, and then a little later, let's see, I became a member of the Junior Foresters, which was a little athletic group that played on the open lots in Portland Place or Westmoreland Place.
They hadn't built up yet.
They hadn't completely filled. There were a number of homes, of course, that were already there. And so that was...
This was like a club?
Just, yes, a teacher, athletic teacher would try to make athletics out of us, and so we clumsies did the best we could to learn to be athletes. Then my parents were very forward-looking, and so they decided to move from 4900 Pershing and to try to move out west. And so we bought a lot on Cecil Avenue, which was part of the World's Fairgrounds. We paid $9,000 for that lot, which was an enormous amount of money to pay for a lot. It was 1.5 lots. And the neighborhood was just beginning to be built up because it had been part of a floral clock in the World's Fair of 1904 and hadn't really developed very much, but Skinker had developed and Wydown had developed, and the Igorot village, which was the Arrowhead Lakes at Wydown, and Des Moines, that was left the outlines of the lakes there, and a new road was built to substitute for the World's Fair roads, and so this was a good site here on Cecil Avenue. And my dad sat down and drew the plans for this house, and the plans, after they were finished, were turned over to an architect to get all the technicalities right, but the general outline of all the rooms and the functions and so forth was his and my mother's idea, and they felt that we children should have opportunity for a lovely home. And this is the home I'm still sitting in.
6450 Cecil.
6450 Cecil, and I've only lived here for 65 years so far.
It's continuity.
That's what you'd call staying for a reasonable length of time.
How long did it take for the house to be built?
Oh, I guess it was began the spring of 1920 and wasn't finished until well into 1921. If I recall, the house took $26,000 to construct, and with marble floors and everything, everything as nicely done as possible. We haven't. The brickwork is still untouched, and the copper guttering is still in top condition, and the basement hasn't leaked. And this is the way things were built.
When it was privately done.
When it was privately done and you wanted a superb job. Then we didn't want to have two houses, so we put our house on the market on Pershing Avenue, and had sold each house of the three that the family still owned, and fortunately or unfortunately, somebody came along and bought our house and wanted to move into it right away, and we didn't know how long our Cecil Avenue house would take to build, so the family said, well, we'll try to time it right. Well, of course we didn't, and this house was delayed in its completion, and so we had to move for 6 months to 4400 Lindell, into a flat down there near Rosetta Kane High School, and so that's where we lived for 6 months before coming out here. So
Did you change schools at that time?
not quite yet. I still was going to field school, and I could take the streetcar there, but they realized that I might go to another school. So the question is, should I go to, I was still going to field school, and John Burroughs School was organized by some of the neighbors, the Eismans across the street, the Stixes, and the Gellhorns, and some of the lovely families of St. Louis, and who wanted a progressive school system. And so one day they came over and talked to my parents and said, would you like to send your child to a progressive school? Well, my sister was at Mary Institute, and they said they wanted to start a coeducational school. They had already started community school, but I had not gone to that, and so the big leap forward was for John Burroughs School. So my parents discussed the matter with me, and whether I had a vote or not, I'm not sure, but it was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me that when John Burroughs School opened in 1923, I was in the student body, and this was the greatest stimulant to my opportunity to enjoy life that could have happened to me. I was a kid of 12 years old, and I was going into an environment with other children who were capable and came out of homes that had forward-looking parents, and it changed my entire outlook on everything. It presented every opportunity, and had a wonderful group of teachers, and so that was the beginning of my private school education.
And it was always fun. I mean, it was a stimulating place from the first year.
There was nothing like it. In other words, the opportunity and the excitement of taking a lot of subjects and being shown the routine things like French, Latin, English, and mathematics, but we had science courses every year. We had history courses, we had civics, we had manual training, we had athletics, but the idea of going to school in a coeducational environment, which I had come from in a public
Right.
school, I didn't realize how important that was until we came in contact with some of the others at Country Day or at Mary Institute had gone to a one-sex type of schooling. So that was a great school.
How did you get there?
We got there in another wonderful social way. The 04, the Clayton Dinky, as it was called, started at Skinker and Lindell. It was between Lindell and the right in there. The line began, and then it went over Skinker to Wydown and out Wydown through Clayton and behind all of the Dew houses. So that used to be the place we did our homework and where we chatted with the other kids and beat on each other, and we'd come home the same way. So none of us needed any transportation if we're lucky enough to be on that line. Of course,
Was
kids
Red
from
the
Webster.
conductor? Red was the conductor then?
Oh, I don't remember.
He was when I went.
I guess
He was an
whoever
old timer.
was, I really don't know, but whoever was the conductor on those cars really had his hands full, because there was no trick that we wouldn't try. We sometimes used to soak the tracks so that it couldn't go up a grade. We'd pull the trolley, and the usual innocent type of prank was.
Did you ever ride to the end of the line to Dean Sisters?
Oh yes, the Dean Sisters had delicious hamburgers, and that was a treat for all of us, of course. But we'd walk to the end of the line from John Burroughs School, and so we wouldn't take. That's where the turnaround was.
What were your favorites?
Can we stop here?
All right, we're back at the table. And after Burroughs, where did you go?
I went directly to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1928 and graduated from there in 1932. Then
As an engineer?
as an engineer in mechanical electrical engineering, and that was a delight. I was in the middle of the Depression, so then I went on to Washington University Law School and graduated from there in 1935.
Okay. Meanwhile, were you participating in athletics or anything along the way other than just studying?
I was on the MIT soccer team. I was the fullback, and I was played on the MIT squash team, and so
You enjoyed
I
that.
did athletics the best that I could.
And you came back to St. Louis?
Came back to St. Louis and had the opportunity of going to law school and working for Abraham Lowenhaupt at the same time. So,
How did you do that?
well, I went in the afternoons, I would go down there, and so that was one of the inducements for going to law school here.
Mm-hmm.
And, all right, then I married Evelyn Frances Edison,
Whom you had known for a long while?
whom I had met in the fall of 1938 at a party given by Natalie Edison Freund. And I took Evelyn out for the first time in December 1938, or January, forget, 1939, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
We were married in November 29, 1939.
Okay. And were you practicing law then?
Yes, I was practicing from 1935 on. I was practicing law at that time. And then Evelyn and I went on the most exciting honeymoon anybody could ever ask for. We took a cruise on the SS Argentina down the east coast of South America, and when we reached Santos, Brazil, we saw French and English merchant marine boats with sandbags and with guns on them, and we saw the captured German ship Windhoek in the harbor, and as our ship sailed out of the harbor, we did not realize it, but we were sailing into the first naval battle of World War II between the German pocket battleship Graf Spee and the Ajax, Achilles, and Exeter of the British Navy, and we were in the middle.
Did they know it was the beginning themselves? Did those boats know that they were the...
Well, there hadn't been a naval battle up to that time. There had been merchant vessels that had been captured by men of war. The Graf Spee had taken a number of merchant ships and taken all their supplies and sunk them, and taken their captains prisoner and what have you, but the British and French had been chasing them all over the South Atlantic and North Atlantic, and this was a rendezvous, and the ship Mendoza, which we had seen, was used as a decoy in order to trap the German battleship Graf Spee. And then the Graf Spee went into the harbor at Montevideo, where we were going, and was scuttled, and in the Montevideo harbor, and we watched the Graf Spee burn in the harbor, and our parents were scared green, blue, and
Because
violet.
they knew your itinerary.
Because they had read about all this activity, and we were having the time of our lives. So we brought back pictures of the battle and had them published in the Post-Dispatch, just a casual piece of entertainment on a honeymoon. So we started off
In a blaze of glory.
in a real action, and I want to tell you, so we just had a wonder. Then the captain committed suicide at the Graf Spee in Buenos Aires. We went to his funeral, and
It was part of the trip?
well, we saw to it that it was all part of the trip, and so all right. So
You got back safely.
oh sure.
Where did you all settle down?
6450 Cecil
Okay.
Avenue, because by this time my mother cancer of the breast in 1938, and it metastasized, and she died at that time. And so my father was all alone, and we had this house, and he had no place to go and nothing to do, and so we thought we'd try to take care of him for a little while, and he died a few years thereafter, and so
you lived in with him.
so we moved in here to try to run this house on a temporary basis, and so
He died while living here,
yeah,
so to speak.
so on a temporary basis, we've lived here for 47 years so far.
Where are your parents buried?
Mount Sinai Cemetery.
And he died in 1940, 41?
Yeah, 43. I think.
43.
And so
You had children?
we have 2 children. The oldest is Linda Newman, now Mrs. Peter J. Solomon of New York City.
When was she born?
She was born
For the
on
record.
May the 23rd, 1941,
Mm-hmm. And does she have children?
and she has 3 children.
Just their names.
Joshua
Mm-hmm.
N. Newman Solomon,
Mm-hmm.
Abigail Rose Solomon, and Kate Jenny Solomon.
Are any of them married?
No, the oldest one just going to Harvard.
All right.
My son was born August 14, 1944. His name is Andrew Edison Newman,
Mm-hmm.
and he has 2 children. Daniel Daniel Mark Newman
Mm-hmm.
and Anthony Edison Newman.
Okay.
And thank you.
Could we just mention one sentence that your favorite hobby, just to get it on record? One of your
It's a
favorite hobbies.
disease.
Okay. Well, I think we have to not just forget it totally.
Hmm?
What?
Well, I mean,
I think we just.
uh,
When did you become that interested in coin collecting? As a
at
young
the
man?
age of 9, I was given a 1-cent piece by my grandfather. No, it couldn't have been at the age of 9. It must have been before that. At the age of 9, my grandfather's 1-cent piece, which he had saved, was given to me, I believe. It's, or perhaps he gave it to me at the age of 7, but I didn't do anything about it till the age of 9.
Mm-hmm.
And that one coin began my interest. And
So as a young man, you were interested in, a young boy, you were interested in coin collecting.
As a boy, I was stimulated with a little of everything, and this disease took off, and this is a major part of my life today.
Mhm.
And we'll not, I don't think it's worthwhile to talk about that too much. I don't want to talk about me.
Well,
Talk about Evelyn sometime, but
all right. But that's such an important part of, when you were in college, did you continue with your?
oh, very casually.
Mhm.
In college, I sort of rested, didn't do anything. No, my big work became
And
at the age of 14, I got a great big spread in the newspaper as being a numismatist, and I didn't know anything, but it was kind of silly. But everybody has been so helpful to me that I've been able to write books, give lectures, teach numismatics, do all the things that are just all on the side
Right.
while doing everything else.
Did you stay at the law and help firm for long?
Yes, until, let's see, I moved over to, no, I moved over to Jake Chasnoff, Taylor, Chasnoff, and Wilson. When I graduated from law school, they wanted me to start out there. We were all very friendly, and,
Mhm.
and so...
That's where you were first after you
That's
graduated.
where I was first professionally running
Mhm.
a law practice. Daniel Taylor had lived across the street from me on Berlin Avenue, and I had heard him give a speech on the 4th of July on an Italian ship going to Europe. It was one of the most patriotic speeches I've ever heard given in my life, and he became my friend, and so he was very enthusiastic when in 1935 I joined his firm, and so was Jake Chasnoff, who was very my friend and very, very wonderful to work for. So they started me out in practice.
And how long were you there?
Well, we had I was forced to, by World War II, to give up the law practice and either join the Army or go back to going to engineering, which I'd been trained with. So I did airplane design during World War II
In St. Louis?
in St. Louis.
Under whose auspices?
The White Rogers Electric Company. We did de-icing controls for bomber aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy that?
Frankly, it was very, very difficult because I was working in a factory trying to improve products with all of the government regulations and all of the lack of independence that one
Mm-hmm.
has when he's in the factory, but I felt that was the best thing I should do for during the war period, where I could be at least of some help in connection with my training.
Mm-hmm. And after that, you returned to that. Well, just get you to Edison. When did you get? You went back to being a lawyer?
Well, while the war was on, I had done some work for Aaron Waldheim in connection with renting out some of the buildings he had on 6th Street. And I had met Harry Edison. I represented the landlord, and Harry Edison was a person I was introduced to that wanted to make a lease for a shoe store. And so I worked out this lease arrangement with him, and that's how I happened to meet Harry Edison by sheer accident.
Mm-hmm.
But that had nothing to do with my... Then, after I married in 1939 to Evelyn, why, Harry Edison occasionally gave me a little piece of work to do. So I'd worked against him in the beginning, and then he let me do a little work here and there for them. So after my work for the war military, why, then they asked me if I would join Edison Brothers and do legal work for them. So I felt that that was a great opportunity, and so
You said yes.
that happened. Because I would have begun to practice law again independently, but instead I went with the company, and I've been there ever since.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for coming, and
And I thank you for giving me this opportunity.
now you're a devil. Press it.